Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm here today live talking with my friend and astrologer, Dr. Malini Iyer. We're going to be talking about the sun moving into sidereal Capricorn and what's also called Makara Sankranti. This is a very special festival in India, and we're going to talk about the astronomy behind it, some of the confusion behind it, and some other things. So, Malini, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sam. Thank you for having me over again on your channel.
Do you still
I'm
have your
really,
lab coat on? By the way, I just noticed that.
oh, it's not my lab coat on.
Oh, okay.
it's,
I
it's
thought
a,
Malini's an actual doctor doing experiments in the lab, and I thought it was like, wait, is that the lab coat?
no, it's not.
So, so we're
I'm
going to
glad
be
it's
talking
not.
about this Makara Sankranti that is happening, and again, Makara means it means Capricorn in Vedic astrology, and Sankranti is the sun moving into a new sign. So it's literally the sun moving into Capricorn. Here's a picture of the chart here.
Mhm.
That's you see. This is January 14th, and the sun by this time tomorrow, by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, it will have moved in to Capricorn. So Malini, why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is for Indians, and whatever you would like to add, to start us off talking about this.
Yeah, so let's just talk about the cultural aspect about it of Makar Sankranti before we move into the astronomical details. And Sam has beautifully outlined that. I've seen the presentation here. So culturally, Makar Sankranti it's called different names around India. In southern India, it's called Pongal. Uh, in central part of the country, it's called Makar Sankranti, which is really sun's ingress into Capricorn, Makara. Um, in areas of Punjab, this festival is called Lori, and commoners do not relate the festival with any astronomical event. For them, uh, it's celebrated as a harvest festival, and most celebrations involve some preparation of rice, jaggery, or sesame seeds and jaggery. So that laddu that you're seeing on round balls that you're seeing on the screen that Sam is showing on the first picture, they're called tilgul. They're sesame balls, sesame and jaggery balls. And around this time of the year is when sugarcane is harvested, and it's a big thing. Sugarcane is a big thing. People who live in India uh, know how much we enjoy our sugarcane juice.
Love our
And
sugar. Yeah, that's in the Vedas, sugarcane juice.
sugarcane
By the
juice,
way,
right?
sesame is associated with Saturn. It's the grain associated with Saturn.
Yeah, it's a great. That's correct. Um, and so it's a festival where and you share your most recent harvest. uh, People also fly kites. Kites have to do with wind. There is a change in the direction of the wind, but also Makar is Capricorn ruled by Saturn. If you think about the sign that Saturn is exalted in, it's actually Libra, which is an air sign. So anything symbolizing Saturn, sesame seeds, symbolizes Saturn. So the sun enters Saturn's sign, and that's what is celebrated. It's people coming together. People are celebrated. It's not the kings or the governors or the governments of the world celebrated, but the people and their hard work that is celebrated during this festival. Um,
It's a very Saturn theme, right? People in their hard work,
yeah, very,
and
very.
and it's also, of course, it's happening like in winter, where it's kind of like and initially it was a solstice festival initially. You can even see up here, just to show, this was from Wikipedia. I just wanted to look, and it says Makar Sankranti, or Uttarayana, which means northern course,
Yeah,
or Mughi. I also found this to be very interesting. It's almost Mugha.
yeah. Hmm.
We're in the month of Mugha, yeah.
Yeah, we are. Actually, we are in the month of Paushya.
It's Pausha now, right? Yeah, it
Yeah,
used to be Mugha
yeah.
back in the Vedas, but because we have the precession of the equinoxes. This is what I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit. But also you said Pongal. What does Pongal mean? I've seen that too. What does the word mean? Do you know?
Pongal is any rice preparation. So
See, this
preparation
is my
from
thing. It's all about the food. Come on, who are we kidding? You guys, it's just get together and eat sweets. It's every Indian holiday. Get together and eat sweets, explode firecrackers, fly kites, right? There are no firecrackers here, or are there?
there are no firecrackers. There's this flying of the kite, which is really big. This festival is symbolized by flying of the kite, and there are kite competitions. I remember as a kid, we used to be very competitive, and we used to all be on our terrace, fighting with people or competing with people in opposite complexes, and we would use our kites to break the string of their kite and then go and run and collect it.
Oh,
Uh, so we that's a competition. The word people use generally when they win something is kai poche. And there's I put it in my post for Makara Sankranti. There's also a saying called dheel de re bhaiya, which really means loosen the string. Be loose and be relaxed and be fluid, and like that's how you fly the kite. So that's pretty big. The
and
other
so is it
saying is
also like a beginning of the year celebration? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is it also like a beginning of the year too, like new beginning kind of thing, or not so much?
uh, so most Indians do not celebrate New Year on Makar Sankranti.
No,
Uh, they would Some Indians would celebrate New Year around right after Diwali,
Diwali,
and
yeah.
then Southern Indians would celebrate New Year when Sun ingresses into Aries, right? Uh, so there are two different New Year celebrations, but nobody celebrates the New Year as such around this time. It's
Okay.
only the Western people being educated in the Western system would recognize January 1st as the New Year just because it's cultural. But there is no, you know, uh, it's Western cultural. It's embedded in the education system, but it's not a part of like the in traditional Indian celebration.
And
Yeah.
so anything else you'd like to add to that before I talk about some of this?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to also let people know again. One of the things is the origin of Makara Sankranti, um, and especially this thing that says Uttarayana. You might have wondered why I said "oops," and even when I showed Malini, because she knows what this means too. It's like, "Whoop!" It's not Uttarayana because Uttarayana means the northern course. It's when the northern course begins, which is the solstice.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is originally a solstice, or Makara Sankranti literally means the sun going into Capricorn, but and that used to coincide with the solstice. And um and again it even says here now the sun moves norther moves on northwards in the Hindu calendar dedicated to the deity Surya, etc. So it keeps talking about how there's confusion because it's often celebrated. And Malini, you could tell me if I'm right or wrong about this because I don't really know, but at least in the mind of most Indians, perhaps, and again, even though they're not really dialed into it, but would most of them even think that this was the day that the sun goes north or something like that? Or because again, this is what most Indians also think, that this is the day that the sun moves north. I mean, you see it's even here on Wikipedia. And again, not as if Wikipedia is the dictionary of the world, but it's pretty. This is like the first thing it says. The whole thing is about that this is when the sun moves north. It even says now the sun moves northwards in the Hindu calendar. The sun moving north isn't depending on a culture or an interpretation. It's either moving north or it's not. It's a scientific thing. It's not. But again, it's like celebrated as the day the sun moves north, when again the sun started moving north on the solstice, which, as we know, was December 21st or so. But what used to happen is, or what happened, and I'm going to show you this in a minute. I have this document prepared where we actually talk about where this came from. But do most people think that, Malini, or again, is it not really thought about, or what do you think?
Yeah, commoners don't really think about cosmology. Somehow, people have lost that. They've divorced the sky from the celebrations, but you will definitely hear it in temples, right? And the priests would mention it. And but most people do not connect, like the word Uttarayana with northern course of the sun. That connection doesn't come. It's just a word. It's a celebration. Most people will not even think about the cosmology of it, right?
And they
Uh,
would say it's, the return of the light. They would say the same kind of thing, perhaps, that you would say on the solstice, because these are the things we say on the solstice.
mhm.
It's the return of the light. Would
Yeah.
would something like that be said on Makara Sankranti? Return of the light?
Um, people, I mean, I grew up in Mumbai, so not many people talk about return of light in that concept.
Yeah.
Uh, but they do talk about, like there is a saying called "Til Gul Gya God God Bhola," which is really like share these sweets you make, and just try to be very sweet with each other, because there is this connotation of people being a little irritable around this time of the year. So, um, but nobody really remembers the cosmology or the return of light.
No, I get that.
Especially,
Okay, yeah. So I didn't know if it was very similar, because you've lived here now, of what people might say on the solstice and the winter and things like that. Because
yeah,
even though people, I mean, people don't study cosmology here, nobody knows it, but people will pretty commonly say return of the light and all that around the solstice. And it's this idea that it's the darkest day and now it's going to start getting lighter and all of that. This is what we commonly know of as the winter, but that's not really part of it in the Makara Sankranti in India, that whole part of it.
yeah. People do not really talk about return of light.
Okay.
Common
And
people don't
but
talk
but
about
you
it.
did say that you hear this in temples and whatnot, which in some ways is almost
Yeah.
more of a difficulty. That, again, this is unfortunate that priests and those who are supposed to be doing ceremonies should know that the solstice, return of the light, had almost a month, almost a month earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a problem, and I have gotten into debates with priests, so I am guilty of saying that. But if you talk about people educated in the Western system, they're taught what solstice is in school, and in a geography class, people will be taught what a solstice is, so they recognize what a solstice is, but they don't connect solstice or
With Makara Sankranti.
with Makar Sankranti or
Yeah.
Uttarayana.
Right. So this is the whole thing I also just wanted to talk about, is how this happened, is because, again, one of the things is, what happened is in the 5th century or so, the great astronomer and astrologer Varahamihira showed the connection between, or when the solstice was happening at that time, and also when the solstice was happening back in the Vedas in earlier times. And this is something that the Vedic people have been doing forever, is they've been tracking the solstice. And this is one way that we know, first of all, that they understood the difference between the calendar and the zodiac, because, again, the zodiac is sitting there, it's the sky that's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
And especially back in the Vedas, before they were using horoscopic astrology or zodiac signs and all, everything was measured with nakshatras.
Yeah.
And even to this day, even all the soli lunar months and whatnot, again, like we just had the month of Magha, which is a soli lunar month. Of course, that's connected to the constellation of Magha, the nakshatra, which is all sidereal based. So India has been measuring calendar phenomena like solstices and equinoxes back into the mist of time. So understand, if you're measuring the calendar with the zodiac, then they're two different things.
Yeah.
Simple. One is the zodiac, one is the calendar. And again, the most important thing we're measuring with the calendar is the precession of the equinoxes, because this shows a migration of the solstice and equinox points over thousands of years. And so what's happened now is what used to be Makara Sankranti, which is the sun going into Capricorn at the time of Varahamihira, that actually happened on the same day as the solstice.
Yes.
At the same time. But that was literally 1700 years, about 1500, 1600 years ago, that that, that was coincident. Now it's moved, but they're still acting as if the sun going into Capricorn is the solstice, Uttarayana. That's what Uttarayana means. It means northern course of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just show you here briefly how this worked. Like you can see these direct statements. I'm just going to kind of read through this and show you and then we'll talk about it a little bit. But it says here, Makara Sankranti confusion. Makara Sankranti is supposed to be a celebration of the northern course of the sun, the solstice. Instead, it has become confused due to astronomical statements in the ancient texts, most notably from Varahamihira. This error has some damaging effects, most notably ceremonies that are supposed to be done while the sun is moving north are now being performed after the sun has already moved south, after the summer solstice, as the priests are waiting for Kite Sankranti, or the solar ingress of the sun into Cancer. So what they do is they start the northern course, Uttarayana, on Makara Sankranti, which is January 14th, but then they wait for, and by this time, the sun has already been moving north for more than 3 weeks. And then they wait for Kite Sankranti, or the sun to hit or to go into sidereal Cancer, which is also about 3.5 weeks after the sun has turned south. So I'm going to show you that in the diagram once we get down here. But this is why it's quite a problem. And for example, my friends at the Hindu monastery in Kauai, they've been on top of this for years. I even did an interview with the Swamis there several years ago where we talked about trying to correct this error of the northern course not being connected to the solstice, and for Makara Sankranti to be disconnected this way. So I'll just read through these texts. This was from Varahamihira in Brihat Samhita. He says, at present, which means at his time, Dakshinayana, which is the southern course, starts from the beginning of Cancer and the other from the initial point of Capricorn. This actual fact, which goes against the old statement, can be verified by direct observation, which means northern course starts from the beginning of Capricorn, southern course from the beginning of Cancer. But again, this was in about the 5th century. And he says this statement goes against the old statement, and you can verify it by direct observation. You can see it. You can directly see it, which is the most powerful form of proof. Is if you can see it, then you know it's true. It's not, you don't have to believe him. Just look for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so below we see the old statement with the nakshatras measuring both the northern and southern courses at the time of the Vedanga Jyotisha. This was what Varahamihira was referring to. When situated at the beginning of Shravishta segment, the sun begins to move north. When it reaches the midpoint of a Aslesha segment, it begins moving south. So this is from the Vedanga Jyotisha, and here's the diagram. This is the way they were doing the calendar and the zodiac in Vedanga Jyotisha. So when the sun reaches here, Dhanishta, now watch these segments the whole time, because you're going to watch this purple line move. You see this purple line is connected to the solstice, winter solstice, summer solstice. Winter solstice, when the sun hits Dhanishta, it turns north. This is all north, north, north. It hits here, middle of Aslesha, and it starts to move south. Now, that's at the time of Vedanga Jyotisha, right? That's about 1500 BC. So again, at the time of Varahamihira, about 2,000 years later, again, this line isn't here anymore. Now it's here, okay? It used to be here. This was the line, beginning of Dhanishta and middle of Aslesha. That's where this purple line was then. It was right here. At the time of Varahamihira, it had gone all the way back to here, and now he was saying that it's happening in Capricorn. And he says the northern course happens, or first he said the southern course happens at the initial point of Cancer and the opposite at the initial point of Capricorn. That was at his time. And again, we can track all this and know it's right because we can calculate the rate of precession.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, well, you say that. Who knows? Everybody knows. It's like I said, you can't say that the northern course is part of the Hindu calendar. The sun is either moving north or it's not. There's no debating it. So we can calculate the rate of precession from now and know exactly when these statements were made. By the way, that's how we know how old the Vedanga Jyotisha is, or at least the knowledge in it, because it's tracked to the precession of the equinoxes. So at the time of Varahamihira, he made these statements then, and they were true at that time. However, if we read that statement now as if it's true, which is what people are doing now, Makara Sankranti, or the sun going into Capricorn. Now watch this purple line. I'm going to show the purple line of Varahamihira now as a dotted black line. Okay, so this is the dotted black line of Varahamihira. This was when it happened for him, Capricorn and Cancer, that he just said, right? He just said northern course happens in Capricorn, southern course in Cancer. Okay, so that was at his time, and now this is our time. Again, this keeps going backwards. Time of the Vedas, it was here. Time of Varahamihira, it was here. In our time, it's here. And now the northern course starts, which means the winter solstice starts when the sun is about 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And then the southern course starts when the sun is at about 6 degrees of Gemini, sidereal Gemini. So this is where the solstices happen now. And by the way, equinoxes as well, 6 degrees Pisces, 6 degrees Virgo. That's when the equinoxes happen. So again, this is where it is. What happened is on the vernal equinox, which would have been what Varahamihira was calling Makara Sankranti 1,500 years ago, was actually this point.
Yes.
And now it's moved. And here's why it's a problem, because if we look at this, the error and the difference, Makara Sankranti is starting 24 days late after the winter solstice. So it's actually now it's supposed to be this time to that time, right? Or I'm sorry, it's supposed to be this time to that time. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be from the purple lines. It starts here and it ends here. That's what it's supposed to be. But instead, we're still doing it now based on as if it was here.
Yeah.
And then we're not finishing until it's, because these are sidereal, the sun moving in sidereal Capricorn and then sidereal Cancer. So you have this period of time after the sun has already turned south. But priests in certain temples are still doing these ceremonies as if the sun is still moving north. And it's very important because there are many important, especially temple consecrations and tarpanas and all kinds of ceremonies that are supposed to be done only when the sun is moving north. They wait for the northern course to do these things because that's said to be the course of the gods. And so this 24-day error is crucial, especially when you have these different ceremonies and consecrations and pujas and ceremonies done after the summer solstice, waiting for Cancer Sankranti or Kite Sankranti. So they're waiting during this lag. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll bring Malini in. We understand that the thing that really got confused is that the purpose of this statement really is not about the zodiac. It's not to highlight where Cancer and Capricorn are. That's not what Varahamihira was doing. He wasn't saying, make sure you know that Cancer is here and Capricorn is here. Just like the importance of the statement in the Vedas wasn't so that you know where Shravishta and Aslesha is, or the point wasn't to say here's Dhanishta and here's Aslesha. No, it's to say here is the northern course.
Yes.
They were making sure that you knew of the solstices, not of the zodiac. So the zodiac delineation wasn't the important part. That just happened to be the way to measure it.
Yes.
And so this got confused and people are going, oh no, northern course and Capricorn are the same. No, Capricorn just happened to be incidental. If that was written now, they would say that northern course happens at 6:40 Mula and 0 Ardra.
Yeah.
That's all they would say. They would say northern course, Uttarayana happens at 6:40 Mula and Dakshinayana happens at 0 Ardra. This goes against the previous statements of Varahamihira when he said it was Capricorn, and you can see it with your own eyes or whatever. It would just be something that simple. But it wouldn't be so that you know where 6:40 Mula is, the middle of Mula or the beginning of Ardra. That's not the reason for making the declaration. The reason for making the declaration is so you know when the solstice is and you can date the text. Because again, they also did these things for dating purposes so that you knew when when to make these, when the texts were actually written.
Mm-hmm.
So Malini, what would you like to say to that?
I think, Sam, this is fantastic to just see it this way laid out. Um, and the point we miss when we miss the celebration of Uttarayana is literally celebrating the northern coast, especially for the northern hemisphere, the northern coast of the sun, right? And through epics and through even in Mahabharata, right, the importance of northern coast is highlighted. And most people, you know, loosely know the story of Bhishma, who was injured on the battlefield in Mahabharata, and he requested Arjuna, who killed him, to make a bed of arrows for him. And he Bhishma had this boon that he would only leave his body whenever he likes, right? That he could leave his body on his own wish, and he wanted to leave his body only when the sun hits its northern course, so on Uttarayana. So he laid on a bed of arrows. Who lays on a bed of arrows for 58 days? For 58 days, almost 3 months, waiting for the northern course of the sun so that he could leave his body. And that's what we are missing. You know, it's great we are celebrating Makara Sankranti, and it has its own importance, and bringing the Saturn themes of hard work and sharing in our life. But I think we also need to readjust and start celebrating the return of light, start celebrating Uttarayana. And, you know, a lot of Western yogic cultures do that. They have a winter solstice celebration. And if
Yeah,
you
it's
live in
much
an
more of
ashram
a
in
thing in
India,
the West. And, the reason I bring this up too is just so that not just Indians, but people can understand that the importance of the solstice, of course, because it is when the light is at the darkest, and it is literally the return of the light. It is, by
mm-hmm,
the way, our Christmas celebration and all that in the West is literally, excuse me, the solstice celebration. Um,
mm-hmm,
but what you're saying is so important, and the the northern chorus, Uttarayana, is again, for those who don't understand spiritual traditions of India, it's so important. That's why priests and pujaris and whatnot, this is what they're trained to know.
mm-hmm.
So it's unfortunate that there's still this disconnect from the cosmology, that this error is still being made. But even in many of the tales and in many of the epics, the northern course, like you said, this whole story of Bhishma and whatnot, it's not an incidental thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a casual thing in Indian spiritual, energetics.
Yeah.
Please continue.
And the second thing I wanted to say is we need to approach cosmology or astronomy and astrology with a little bit more logic, right? We need to look at the sky and we need to know where the planet is in the sky rather than rely on some calculation in some ancient text, right? If you are not looking at the sky and you're not mapping where the constellation is and where the planets fall, this you're digging yourself a big hole. So, as a practitioner of any yogic tradition, you need to know how to look at the sky and know exactly what the sky is showing. And Sankranti or all planets move east to west, right? They are moving east to west, and we are using this measurement because all the stars are laid in that ecliptic east to west. We're using that as a scale to measure the northern and southern course of the sun, right? You're measuring this, that which is caused by the axis, the tilted axis of the earth, but you're measuring something that's moving this way with stars that are aligned east to west. So we need to also be a little bit more intelligent about how we look at the sky and what we are measuring, and not just sleepwalk through it because there's somebody telling us to, right? We need to be awake to these energies so that we can really connect and make use of these auspicious times to to live a more rich life, fulfilled life.
And the thing you mentioned about the east and west rather than the north and south, really, it's only the sun and because of our Earth being tilted, the obliquity of the Earth, the sun is really the only one that moves north and south for really any intensive purposes. Planets along the ecliptic tend to go up and down relative to the narrow band, but that's not the same. The sun moving north and south, it's good. It's very important to explain what that means. Is it literally, and because it also delineates the difference between the zodiac and the calendar. Again, the thing to really understand about this, and what I said before, was that Varahamihira and even the ancient Vedic people, they were not delineating the zodiac in this case. They were delineating something that's connected to the calendar, the solstice. And they were showing how we measure one with the other, like I said, but when they're talking about the northern and southern course of the sun, they mean in the sky. Like for us in the northern hemisphere now, notice how we don't have as much sunlight as we did 6 months from now, where we're going to have a lot of sun in the sky based on our tilt. Right now, the sun is cutting a very narrow path in the sky. That's what's referred to as south. It goes southern, it gets smaller. The sun started turning south on the summer solstice. It's at the highest. And after that, it starts getting lower and lower in the sky until the winter solstice, when it's at its lowest on the winter solstice. From there, it starts getting brighter and brighter. So the sun is now, it's 24 days after the darkest day. This is what it's meant by north, is the sun going north in the sky, going higher in the sky every day until it reaches its very highest, which is the summer solstice. Then it starts to turn south. So and all of that is based on the tilt of the Earth in the sky relative to the sun. Yeah. You've all seen those diagrams of the sun being tilted and the southern hemisphere getting hit and the northern hemisphere getting hit, and then the equinox being equal. Again, equinox is when we have the spring and the fall equinox, then it's equal because the sun is now hitting the equal part, right? When we have, where we are now, it's kind of more like this. It's less. When we're in the summer, it's like this. It's more north. And this is how the sun appears to move. Let me try to line that up with from our vantage point, because the Earth is tilted. You imagine this is the axis. And so the sun appears to go north and south like this. Whereas east and west is the degrees of longitude in the sky. For example, like we have here, the sun east just refers to the fact that it's 1 degree here. Let's say it's 0.018 on January 14th. On January 15th, it'll be 1 degree and 18. Each degree is just east. That's what it means by that. Is east just means that it keeps moving further in that direction, right? Yes. Did I say that right? Is that east or west? I'm sorry. This is where my dyslexia is terrible. I think it's east.
It's moving from west to east, so it's moving
west to east.
Correct.
See, I can get them backwards if it's too short. Sometimes so it's moving from west to east, like I thought, right? Because the sun is rising in the east. So again, as the Earth is turning again, because remember the sun isn't rising, the Earth is turning from toward the east. So this ascendant degree keeps going this way toward the east. That's right. Of course, I knew it. I just wanted to double check. I could have got it wrong. When you've made as many of these logical errors as I have over the years, you get a little gun shy. But so that's what west to east means. Those are two of the first really important directions. Is north and south is what they were talking about there. What you just saw, Varahamihira and the Indians talking about, the northern course, the southern course. And again, they're talking about when it shifts, when it changes. The northern course begins, of course, on the darkest day. Then the northern course begins. And so that's what they're delineating in those passages, so that we know when the northern course starts and when it ends, so we can stop doing those important ceremonies once the sun has stopped. It's no longer moving north.
Yeah. And also the southern course is important because right after the summer solstice, we have Guru Purnima and all those festivals which lead us inwards, right? So in the southern course or Dakshinaya, those 6 months when the sun in the northern hemisphere is moving south, you're supposed to go inwards and not like go out and create, right? You're not partying, you're not creating, you're not making stuff, you're going inwards and you're
That's such a great point, because we have all of these spring festivals coming up as the sun is moving north, And then afterwards, we have all of those ones like with Diwali and whatnot. You want to elaborate on that more?
Yeah, so we have we have a few festivals. One is Guru Purnima, when it is said that Shiva became the guru to the Sapta, or the seven sages. And that was a time where they really went inwards and spent time learning uh, and meditating and learning all the yogic practices. So they were not creating and doing stuff in the world, they were really going within. We have Janmashtami, we have Navratri, which is again celebrating the divine goddess. But if you think about the feminine energy, it's the energy of the night, right? So literally, it is like the bigger night that we are resting, we are going within. And we have Diwali, which is also really dark. So people light lamps, right? And all these festivals remind us to become more and more still, more and more quiet, more and more be with ourselves, rather than go outside and have a big celebration.
That's so
Whereas in the
crucial. Like you,
northern course,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I'm sorry. You weren't finished. Go ahead. Yeah.
Whereas in the northern coast, we have festivals like Holi, and you're throwing colors and you're out there, and you have Vasanta Navratri, which is also, there's a procession, and, people celebrating on the streets and dancing. That's a very different kind of celebration. Kumbh Mela, again, is in the northern coast, wherein, millions of people come and celebrate. It's a mela is a carnival. So carnival kind of festivals are celebrated in the northern course, where you're connecting and you're out in the world and you're very energized. It's very rajasic in nature, whereas in Dakshinaya it's very tamasic, or still and heavy in nature, where you're going within and you're becoming more and more still. So those delineations are, you know nobody's going to spell it out for you. You need to be intelligent about it, to contemplate and think why we are doing certain things in a certain way. The sages were very succinct. They would give one liners, and in that one line, if you were an intelligent wise being, you would understand the entire essence of what they were saying. We are in a day and age where we need to think and we need to contemplate and be a little bit more intelligent about how we are living our lives, right?
And I remember when we did the course, Molly and I recently did a course on Indian celebrations and their connection to the calendar. And we have those two Navratris. We have the Vasant Navratri and the one in the fall. And again, the earlier one in the spring is much more about, again, more celebrating and more harvesting time, more of that kind of. And the one in the fall is more about introspection. It's right before even it's the month before Diwali. But even also that same month is also, we have like the birth of Ram, the birth of Hanuman. Like we have Ram Navami, we have Hanuman Jayanti, and all. These are all like they're being born, they're celebrated. And then the later festivals after the sun turns south, you see the similar characters, the Divine Mother, and then also the qualities of Ramayana and Diwali. But now the sun is moving south, and it's like, Ram coming back after the travails and the trials of losing the kingdom. It's not like he's being born and it's the celebration. Now it's like the sun is moving south. So it's like the restriction, the dealing with the struggle and those qualities. You see those parallels. That makes sense?
Yes, that absolutely makes sense. You said that brilliantly.
And again, also, as Molly mentioned, the thing, again, a perfect explanation is, and think of the celebration of like the Kumbh Mela and Mahashivaratri as well. Again, these are two of the most like important spiritual like days, especially like Mahashivaratri. I mean, this is all northern course, kind of the path of the gurus, like literally of the soul leaving, just like the great warrior wanted to wait. He'd lay on a bed of arrows because he wanted liberation once the sun was moving north.
Yeah.
So that northern course of the sun also, again, should make you understand that we're in that time of ascension. It's getting brighter and brighter, and it's an ascending kind of consciousness. And it's my hope, and I'm sure Malini's hope, and all of our hopes who study this, that these deeper that this deeper wisdom is really understood, and not just, as Malini said earlier, not just left to people to, wait for others to kind of tell them what it is. It's not that hard to learn about these things. Again, this is pretty detailed. I go back and, look into all these Vedic texts and whatnot. That's pretty intense scholarship, but I'm just showing it to you. So now that you see it, you can go back and understand, oh, wow, everything has always been connected to the sky, to the stars. The calendar is connected to the zodiac and these cosmic energies. And really, again, the more you look and ponder these things, including all those holidays and whatnot, the more your life is going to have more value and meaning, and you'll be able to really, get more juice from these holidays. And it's also good to enjoy them and eat sweets and fly kites too. You can do all of it. It doesn't mean one doesn't supplant the other, but without the understanding, the knowledge, you don't get that satisfaction.
Yeah. And neither Sam nor I are saying we should not celebrate Makara Sankranti. We should absolutely celebrate it. We should have fun, but we should also celebrate solstice, winter solstice, or Uttarayana, because that's an important spiritual. I don't have a word. Event.
Cycle. I mean, and just understand the cycle. Understand that northern course is, and by the way, like you said, all of the Sankrantis are important. You even said that in many parts of India, they celebrate the new year on the Mesha Sankranti, which is a very important one, when the sun goes into sidereal Aries, right? That's a new year for some people. Again, that one's not really connected to the Soli lunar calendar, but the other new years are mainly connected to the Soli lunar calendar when the sun and moon come together, particularly like Diwali and whatnot.
Yeah. Definitely.
So anyway, Malini, I'm glad you came on and were able to talk about this with me. And I'm going to have a link to Malini's, website and stuff. She does a lot of great articles. Her and I have taught together a lot. We have an upcoming course that we're going to be teaching as well. And we taught one in particular that was on the Indian holidays and the astrology behind them, which I'll drop a link below this video for people if you want to check that out. So anything else, Malini, you want to say?
That's it. We covered a lot. There's a lot to chew on here. Thank you, Sam, for doing this. Thank you for being a champion, because not many people will have the courage to come out and say that there's a mistake. Let's rectify and let's do the right thing. So thank you for doing that and taking a bullet for all of us.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, most people, let's see. Well, you're here too, so you might have some bullets too. No, there's no bullets. I mean, it's just simply, you can't argue with the science. And yeah. There's many of us who have been really wanting to, or have been bringing this out for quite a while. So no reason for anyone to take bullets or do anything. It's very simple. Just get it right. It's nothing, no big deal. We all make mistakes, and it's complicated stuff. It's complicated. So you're certainly welcome in that regard. And everybody enjoy Makara Sankranti and have your sweets and fly your kites and all that. So take care, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.